How could fewer than 600 men bring down an empire of millions? The Spanish conquest of the Aztecs wasn't just a battle of swords and cannons. It was a clash of worlds, where ambition, betrayal, and disease shaped the fate of an entire continent. The fall of the mighty Aztec Empire in 1521 remains one of history's most shocking stories, a moment when the impossible became reality and the course of the Americas was changed forever. Europe's race for new routes. The story of the Aztecs' downfall doesn't begin in Mexico. It begins thousands of miles away in Europe. When the Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople in 1453, the Silk Road, Europe's lifeline to spices, silk, and precious goods from the east, was suddenly cut off. Prices soared, and kingdoms grew desperate. Portugal tried one route, sailing around Africa to reach India, but Spain was eager for its own shortcut. That's when Christopher Columbus stepped forward in 1492, promising riches across the Atlantic. His accidental discovery of the Americas set off a frenzy. Within just a few years, Spain and Portugal nearly came to blows over who would control these new lands. The Pope stepped in with the Treaty of Tordesillas, drawing a line across the Atlantic. Everything west belonged to Spain, everything east to Portugal. Spain had just been handed the keys to most of the Americas, and it wouldn't be long before explorers like Hernán Cortés set their sights on Mexico. Spain plants its first colonies. With the New World officially divided, Spain wasted no time. Columbus's second voyage in 1493 was no simple exploration. It carried settlers, priests, soldiers, and even attack dogs ready to claim land in Spain's name. On the island of Hispaniola, they built Santo Domingo, the first permanent European colony in the Americas. From there, expansion spread like wildfire. Puerto Rico fell in 1508, Jamaica in 1509, and Cuba in 1511. Each new colony fed Spain's hunger for gold, silver, and land. And with every conquest, stories reached Europe of strange cities overflowing with wealth and civilizations unlike anything the Spanish had seen before. By 1519, whispers of a mighty empire deep in the heart of Mexico had reached Spanish ears. Its capital, according to rumor, was larger and more dazzling than anything in Europe. For one ambitious man named Hernán Cortés, those whispers weren't just stories. They were an irresistible call to glory. Hernán Cortés takes his chance. In 1519, Hernán Cortés, a Spanish official stationed in Cuba, saw his chance. The governor had ordered him to lead a small expedition, but when those orders were suddenly revoked, Cortés ignored them. Driven by ambition and the promise of gold, he launched an unauthorized voyage with just a few hundred men, a handful of horses, and a burning desire to carve out his own empire. His ships landed first on the shores of the Yucatan, where he clashed with the Maya. Victories there brought him something priceless: allies and translators, including a woman known as La Malinche, who would become both a guide and a symbol of betrayal to many Mexicans. But Cortés quickly realized the real challenge wasn't the scattered Maya tribes. It was a vast, powerful civilization at the center of Mesoamerica, the Aztec Empire. Rumors spoke of a capital city built on water, with temples touching the sky and markets bursting with riches. For Cortés, it wasn't just an empire, it was the ultimate prize, the power of the Aztec Empire. At the heart of Mesoamerica stood the Aztec Empire, ruled from its dazzling capital, Tenochtitlan. Built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, the city was a marvel. Stone temples rising toward the heavens, canals crisscrossing the streets, and markets so vast they could serve tens of thousands in a single day. To the Spanish, it looked like something out of legend, a city more advanced than many in Europe. The Aztecs weren't just architects of beauty. They were fierce warriors who demanded tribute from surrounding peoples. Their empire stretched across central Mexico, commanding fear and obedience. Yet that power came with cracks. Many subject tribes resented Aztec rule, feeling crushed under endless demands for tribute and sacrifices. Cortés saw those divisions as the key to conquest. If he could turn the Aztecs' enemies into his allies, he might stand a chance against an empire of millions. What the Aztecs didn't know was that their enemies, and something far deadlier than swords, were already on their way: Spain's deadly advantages. On paper, the Aztecs should have crushed Cortés's tiny army, but the Spanish carried weapons the Aztecs had never seen before: steel swords that cut through obsidian blades, muskets that thundered across battlefields, and cannons that shattered enemy lines. Even more terrifying were the cavalry, armored men on horseback horseback, charging with lances, appearing to the Aztecs like half-human, half-beast warriors. Cortés also unleashed war dogs, massive mastiffs trained to tear through enemies. Every clash reinforced the idea that these strange invaders carried supernatural power. But weapons alone weren't Spain's greatest edge. Cortés knew he couldn't win alone, so he forged alliances with tribes who hated Aztec rule. The Tlaxcalans, bitter rivals of the Aztecs, became crucial allies, adding thousands of warriors to the Spanish cause. And then came the weapon no one could see: disease. Smallpox swept through the empire, killing leaders, warriors, and families alike. Entire communities were left defenseless, never having faced such an illness before. By the time the decisive battles came, the Aztecs were fighting with their strength already drained, not just by swords and bullets, but by an invisible enemy. The fall of Tenochtitlan, 1521. In 1521, the Spanish and their native allies marched on Tenochtitlan. At first, the Aztecs fought back with astonishing ferocity, driving the invaders out of the city during what became known as La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. Many Spaniards drowned as they tried to flee with stolen gold strapped to their bodies. It seemed for a moment that the Aztecs had triumphed, but Cortés regrouped. He returned with reinforcements, a stronger alliance of native tribes, and brutal determination. The Spanish built brigantines, small warships, to seize control of Lake Texcoco and cut off the city's supply routes. Soon Tenochtitlan was under siege. Inside the city, famine and disease spread. Smallpox, introduced months earlier, had already killed thousands, including Emperor Cuitlahuac. As the defenders weakened, the Spanish tightened their grip. Day by day, temples, homes, and marketplaces were destroyed. By August 1521, after months of desperate resistance, Tenochtitlan fell. Smoke filled the skies as the once great city was reduced to ruins. Historians estimate that nearly 240,000 Aztecs perished, most not from battle, but from disease and starvation. The mighty empire that had dominated Mesoamerica was gone, and in its place, Spain began building what would become Mexico City. Aftermath and expansion. With Tenochtitlan in ruins, Spain wasted no time, turning victory into empire. Cortés claimed the city for the crown, renaming it Mexico City, which soon became the hub of Spanish power in the Americas. Gold and silver began flowing across the Atlantic, fueling Spain's rise as the richest empire in Europe. But the conquest of the Aztecs was just the beginning. News of unimaginable wealth pushed Spanish ambitions even further south. Less than a decade later, conquistador Francisco Pizarro marched into Peru and confronted the mighty Inca Empire. Though the Incas ruled over millions and controlled vast lands, they too were weakened by civil war and disease. Like Cortés before him, Pizarro used deception, alliances, and brutal firepower to bring down yet another empire. By the mid-16th century, Spain controlled nearly all of Central and South America, from Mexico to Chile, with only Brazil remaining in Portuguese hands. The map of the New World had been redrawn, and Spain stood at the height of its power. But behind the riches and glory was a devastating cost, a cost that would scar the Americas forever. The dark legacy Spain's victories brought them unimaginable wealth. But for the indigenous people of the Americas, the cost was catastrophic. Entire populations were wiped out by smallpox, measles, and other diseases to which they had no defense. Millions more were forced into brutal labor systems, working in mines and fields to fuel Spain's empire. When the native population declined too sharply, the Spanish turned to the transatlantic slave trade, bringing enslaved Africans to replace the dying workforce. It was the beginning of centuries of suffering that tied the fate of the Americas to both conquest and slavery. Religion was another weapon of empire. Spanish missionaries worked to erase traditional beliefs and replace them with Christianity. Temples were torn down, idols destroyed, and churches raised in their place. Entire cultures were reshaped, leaving deep scars that still echo today. In just a few decades, a once thriving civilization that had built one of the greatest cities in the world was gone, replaced by Spanish rule and a legacy of violence, exploitation, and cultural loss. Conclusion: the fall of the Aztec Empire wasn't a single battle. It was the result of ambition, alliances, and forces far beyond human control. Cortés's guns and horses may have shocked the Aztecs, but it was disease, betrayal, and relentless Spanish ambition that sealed their fate. From the glittering city of Tenochtitlan to the rise of Mexico City, the conquest reshaped not just Mexico, Mexico, but the entire world. Spain became a global superpower, while the native peoples of the Americas faced centuries of devastation. It's a story that reminds us how fragile even the mightiest empires can be, and it leaves us with a haunting question. If the Aztecs had resisted just a little longer, would the history of the Americas, and perhaps the world, look completely different today? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the dramatic fall of the Aztec Empire, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more untold stories from history. And let me know in the comments which empire or event should we explore next. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next video.